The sun blazed down on the dusty rodeo grounds of San Sable, Texas. The crowd, a sea of sweat-stained hats and sunburned faces, leaned forward in tense anticipation. But all eyes weren't on the announcer, or even the bull. They were on Rhett Calderón, a seasoned cowboy with a haunted look in his eyes. He sat silently on the edge of the chute, one hand gripping the rope, the other clutching the brim of his hat as if it might anchor him to this earth. Today wasn't just another ride. It was something heavier. His opponent was legendary Silas, Iron Horn, Ortega's most feared bull, known across the circuit as Diablo's Echo. The beast had injured 3 riders this season alone. Black as tar, eyes like fire, and a soul that seemed carved from violence. Rhett knew the risk, but deep inside him burned something more dangerous than fear: shame. He'd broken too many promises, left too many wounds unhealed, especially with his son, Mateo Rojas, who hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. Rhett had whispered a promise once: "No more bull, son, I'm done." But he lied. The chute gate exploded open. Diablo's Echo charged like a bullet from hell. Rhett held on with everything he had. The bull spun, bucked, twisted. 3 seconds passed, then 4, then 5. Suddenly, Diablo shifted hard to the left to trap. Rhett's balance snapped. In a heartbeat, the bull's horn slammed into his temple. Blood exploded into the air. His hat flew. The audience gasped, and Rhett's body collapsed to the dirt like a marionette with its strings cut. The arena fell into complete silence. You could hear the wind shift. One of the rodeo hands, Bo Villarreal, froze mid-step. In the stands, Cruz Delgado, Rhett's old rival, dropped his soda without noticing. Even Holt Dust Devil Navarro, a man who'd seen more blood than most surgeons, removed his hat. Rhett wasn't moving. Dust swirled around his body like smoke. Diablo's Echo stopped mid-charge and turned, strangely still, unnaturally aware. Then, a twitch. Rhett's fingers moved. His hand trembled. Slowly, shakily, he pushed himself off the ground. His face was unrecognizable, bloodied, bruised, one eye nearly swollen shut. Paramedics sprinted toward him, but Rhett waved them off. He stumbled. Forward, toward the bull. Not away. And in that moment, before anyone could stop him, Rhett Calderón did something no one in San Sable had ever seen before. And it brought the entire rodeo to a sudden, breathless halt. For a few heartbeats, no one in the arena moved. Rhett Calderón stood swaying in the dirt, blood dripping down his face, as Diablo's Echo stared him down from just a few feet away. The silence was suffocating. Then something unthinkable happened. The bull didn't charge. He didn't twitch. He simply lowered his head, let out a breath like a sigh, and backed away. Backed away. Backed away. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. It was as if the bull had recognized Rhett not as an opponent, but as something else entirely. In the control booth, Royce Montoya, the head of rodeo operations, dropped his headset and stormed out, pushing past camera crews and yelling into his walkie. This wasn't just a close call. This was a liability nightmare. But down in the arena, no one cared about insurance forms. They watched, stunned, as Rhett staggered to his knees, one hand over his chest, the other still holding his crumpled hat. Paramedics reached him seconds later, but he waved them off again, eyes never leaving the bull as it was guided back into the pen by Colt Zamora, one of the only handlers Diablo ever tolerated. In the medical tent, Rhett finally let them touch him. Blood had dried into the wrinkles around his eyes. A deep gash split his temple, and his ribs were likely cracked. Still, he refused to be taken to the hospital. "Not yet," he muttered. His voice was hoarse, but his mind was louder than ever. That moment with the bull, it wasn't adrenaline or coincidence. Something passed between them, and Rhett felt it in his bones. Something ancient, terrifying, familiar. Outside the tent, the crowd was buzzing. Social media was already exploding. Clips of the encounter had gone viral before Rhett even got his wounds stitched. Whispers flew through the rodeo grounds. Some claimed Rhett had trained the bull in secret. Others swore it was a sign. But Talon Squivel, an old friend of Rhett's and a man who'd ridden bulls in his youth before turning to ranching, had seen enough animals to know bulls don't behave like that. Meanwhile, in the far corner of the grounds, Gage Wildhorn Salazar, a young, reckless rider trying to climb the ranks, watched Rhett with a mix of awe and jealousy. "That's not normal," he whispered to Mateo Rojas, who stood beside him, jaw clenched. Mateo didn't respond. His father, the man he hadn't spoken to in years, had just faced death and survived. But that wasn't what shook him. It was the way Diablo's echo looked at Rhett like he knew him. And deep down, Mateo had a feeling that Bull did know him. And it wasn't the first time. Rhett sat alone on the edge of the empty medical tent hours later, staring into the horizon as dusk began to swallow the sky. The bandage above his eye pulsed with every heartbeat, but he didn't care. Pain wasn't new. Pain was familiar. What wasn't familiar was the quiet in his chest, the stillness that had replaced the chaos. Since that moment in the dirt, face to face with Diablo's echo, something inside him had shifted. It felt less like a miracle and more like a warning. That bull had seen something in him. Something buried, back near the stables. Talon Esquivel ran his hand slowly along Diablo's back through the bars of the chute. The animal was calm, now unnervingly calm. Talon had seen bulls snap ribs, crack skulls, even trample riders without hesitation. But Diablo had backed down from Rhett, not from fear, from recognition. "This ain't no regular bull," Talon muttered to Bull Villarreal, who stood quietly behind him, arms crossed. "He ain't just muscle and instinct. That animal's carrying something ... like he remembers." Inside the announcer's booth, Royce Montoya replayed the footage for the 5th time. Zoomed in, slowed down, paused on Rhett's face as he stood bloodied and broken, and Diablo just ... stared. It didn't make sense. He picked up his phone and dialed a private number. "We've got a situation," he said. "And it ties back to '07. I need records. All of them, especially Delgado's." Then he hung up without waiting for a reply. Whatever was happening now, it had roots in something long buried. Mateo Rojas stood outside Rhett's trailer, fists clenched, heart racing. He hadn't planned on coming. Seeing his father again had stirred memories he'd locked away years ago. The shouting, the broken bottles, the sound of bones hitting walls. But when he saw Rhett in that arena, not just surviving, but walking toward a killer bull without fear, he felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but curiosity. Why had Diablo reacted that way? And more importantly, what was Rhett hiding? That night, Rhett had a dream. He was younger, bruised and breathless, running through a barn engulfed in flames. Somewhere behind him, a bull screamed, not in rage, but in pain. A voice shouted his name. Not a human voice, not quite. He woke up drenched in sweat, breathing hard. He staggered outside, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. And there, just beyond the fence line, barely visible in the moonlight, was Diablo. Watching him, unmoving, waiting . And for the first time in years, Rhett Calderón was afraid. The next morning, Rhett stood at the edge of the corral, staring at Diablo's echo through the steel bars. The bull wasn't pacing. He wasn't agitated. He was ... watching. Still, patient, as if he'd been waiting all night. Rhett reached up instinctively to scratch the bandage on his head. but his hand froze halfway. That dream from the night. Before it hadn't been just a dream. It was a memory. A twisted, buried memory clawing its way back to the surface. He remembered fire, screams, and a mark. A mark burned into flesh dot inside the stables. Talon high spur squivel was flipping. Through an old ledger, dust flying from each brittle page. He'd kept records of every bull he'd ever worked with, including ones that had disappeared mysteriously from the circuit. He stopped on a name that hadn't been spoken in over a decade. Midnight Mercy. Same breed, same body, same scar. On the shoulder. That bull died, he whispered. Or at least that's what they told us. His hands trembled as he grabbed his phone to call Rhett. Meanwhile, Mateo sat in his car, engine idling, watching his father's trailer from a distance. He hadn't slept either. There was something crawling under his skin. Something ugly and familiar. He opened his glove compartment and pulled out a photo. Him as a boy, sitting on Rhett's shoulders in front of a rodeo gate. They were both smiling. But behind the smile, now that he really looked, was fear. Tension in Rhett's eyes. As if he'd always known something terrible was coming. Mateo didn't come here just to watch. He needed answers. Royce Montoya had already made his move. He stood in the dusty back office of the county archive building, tapping his boot against the floor impatiently. The clerk finally returned with a weathered manila folder. Inside incident reports, veterinary, records, and a photo that made Royce's blood go cold. Diablo's echo, younger, under a different name, and standing in front of Rhett Calderón 13 years ago. "Well, Hal," Royce muttered, "you knew that animal before any of us did. And the date on the photo? Exactly 1 week before the fire that destroyed Delgado's ranch. Back at the stables, Rhett lifted Diablo's feeding gate and slowly stepped into the pen. A silence fell over the nearby cowboys. "He's out of his damn mind," one whispered. Rhett didn't speak. He just moved, slow and deliberate, until he stood face to face with the beast again. Diablo didn't move. But as Rhett reached out, his sleeve slid up, revealing a burned brand on his forearm. Long faded but unmistakable dot, it matched the one on the bull. Rhett stared down at the faded brand on his forearm. The same jagged symbol scorched into Diablo's flank. Time hadn't erased it, and had only pushed it into the shadows. But now, under the blistering Texas sun, it was undeniable. Behind him, silence. Around him, stillness. Diablo didn't charge, didn't twitch, just stood there, eyes locked onto Rhett like they were bound by something deeper than time. A memory, a trauma, a secret neither man nor beast had ever outrun. Rhett dropped his arm slowly. "You remember," he whispered, voice cracked. "Just like I do." In the distance, Mateo Rojas watched through the fence, eyes wide with disbelief. That brand, it wasn't from the rodeo circuit. It was from somewhere older, more personal. He could feel it. It stirred something in him, some long-forgotten night from childhood when his father came home burned, drunk, and shaking. Back then, he thought it was just another accident. But now, now, he wasn't so sure. Mateo clenched the fence post tighter. He needed the truth, and he needed it now. Inside the announcer's booth, Royce Montoya pored over more files, Talon Esquivel pacing behind him. This was a breeding operation, Royce muttered. Illegal. Underground. Delgado was mixing bulls with enhanced aggression traits, experimental stuff. And Rhett ... he was one of the handlers. Probably the only survivor when that barn burned. Down. Talon stopped. "You think that fire was an accident?" Royce looked up, his face pale. "I think it was a cover-up. And that bull wasn't supposed to survive." Back at the trailer, Rhett washed the blood from his face in a rusted sink. The cold water didn't help. His reflection stared back, older than he remembered, more broken. The memories came in fragments, midnight runs, syringes, Delgado screaming, bulls foaming at the mouth, the smell of scorched hair. And the day Diablo turned on everyone except him. He should have never come back to San Sable. But fate, or guilt, had dragged him here for a reason. And the past wasn't done with him yet. That night, Mateo knocked on his father's trailer. Door, no words, just silence between them. Rhett opened the door slowly, the light casting long shadows behind him. "I saw the mark," Mateo said. "I saw everything." Rhett stepped aside, letting him in. For the first time in years, father and son stood in the same room, united not by forgiveness, but by unfinished history. Mateo's voice trembled. "What happened that night? The fire? The bull you?" And Rhett, eyes hollow, finally answered. "It wasn't the bull that started the fire. It was me." The silence after Rhett's confession was heavier than any scream. Mateo sat at the small kitchen table in his father's trailer, fingers locked, eyes down. Rhett stood a few feet away, arms crossed, shoulders hunched like he was bracing for impact. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," Rhett said, his voice hoarse. "We were just trying to shut it down, Delgado's operation. He was pushing those bulls past their limits, injecting them, hurting them. Diablo snapped because of it. I tried to stop it light a fire just to ruin the lab. But it spread. Fast." Mateo looked up slowly. "People died, didn't they?" His voice cracked with disbelief and something deeper betrayal. Rhett nodded once. "2 men. Delgado's cousins. I didn't know they were inside." His hand shook as he poured whiskey into a glass but didn't drink it. "I ran. I hid. Delgado threatened me. Told me if I said anything, he'd make sure Mateo disappeared. So I stayed quiet. All these years, I stayed quiet." His voice broke. "And I lost you because of it." Outside, the night was quiet, but not for long. In a motel 2 blocks from the arena, Gage Wildhorn Salazar was watching the now viral video of Rhett and Diablo's encounter on loop. Something about it bothered him, not just the bull's reaction, but Rhett's expression. Gage wanted fame. He wanted his name to be known. And right now, Rhett Calderón was stealing the spotlight. "He's hiding something," Gage muttered. "And I'm gonna find out what it is. And when I do I'll take everything he's got." Elsewhere, Royce Montoya stood in the shadows of an old storage shed behind the rodeo grounds. He had broken the lock earlier that day. Inside, covered in dust and cobwebs, were crates marked with Delgado's insignia bird documents, syringes, breeding charts. He picked up a rustic clipboard and blew the dust away. "Project Echo," it read. And beneath it, Rhett Calderón, primary handler. "Jesus," Royce whispered. "You weren't just a victim. You were part of it." Back in the trailer, Mateo stood up. "You should have told me years ago," he said. "Maybe I wouldn't have hated you so much." Rhett didn't respond. He didn't need to. The weight between them spoke louder than any apology. But before Mateo reached the door, he turned. "You still have that bull. You still have that secret. What are you going to do now?" Rhett looked toward the arena, where Diablo's silhouette still lingered in the moonlight. "I'm gonna finish what I started," he said, "even if it kills me." The sun hadn't yet risen, but Rhett was already saddling up outside the stables. The cold morning air bit through his shirt, but he barely noticed. He hadn't slept. All night, memories of the fire, of the bulls screaming, of Delgado's voice echoing in smoke and flame chased him like wolves. He pulled the gate open and stepped into Diablo's pen. The bull turned to face him, slow and deliberate. For a long moment, they just stood there, 2 survivors, bound by the same flame. "It ends today," Rhett whispered. "You and me. No more secrets. At the far edge of the rodeo grounds, Gage Wildhorn Salazar crouched behind a parked trailer, camera in hand. He had been recording Rhett's movements since 4 a.m., hoping to catch something that would go viral, something that would push his name above Rhett's in the rankings. But what he saw instead shook him. Rhett wasn't training. He was whispering to the bull. And Diablo ... was listening. Gage lowered the camera. "What the hell are you?" he muttered, suddenly unsure if he wanted to be anywhere near either of them. Meanwhile, Royce Montoya sat in his truck, flipping through the recovered Project Echo documents. Pages detailing forced breeding, hormone injections, trauma conditioning. He'd seen a lot of dirty operations in his day, but nothing like this. He circled Rhett's name in red ink, stared at it hard. "You were the key," he muttered. "But were you the monster, or just the one who opened the cage?" He picked up his phone, hesitation in his voice. Then he dialed. "We need to talk. Now. Before someone else gets hurt." Mateo Rojas walked along the perimeter of the arena, fists in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning the fences. Every step toward his father felt heavier now. He wasn't sure if he was ready to forgive Rhett, but he was ready to know the truth all of it. Deep inside, a fear was growing. What if Diablo wasn't the only one created in that fire? What if part of Rhett had been twisted too? What if the man standing out there wasn't just trying to make things right, but trying to destroy himself in the process? In the arena, Rhett began setting up the old wooden chute, the one from the Delgado Ranch. He had kept it hidden for years. The same chute Diablo was born in. This was where it began. And now, this is where it would end. The ritual wasn't about writing. It was about memory, about forcing the truth out from where it had been buried in blood and ashdod. And as the first light of dawn broke over San Sable, someone cut the arena's power. The arena went completely dark. The floodlights cut out mid-howl, plunging the entire rodeo ground into silence and shadow. Rhett froze where he stood, one hand on the old chute, the other instinctively reaching for the flashlight clipped to his belt. Diablo's echo stirred. Inside the pen, stomping once, twice. Not panic anticipation. Rhett's breath caught in his throat. He knew this wasn't a coincidence. Someone had flipped that switch. Someone who wanted the past buried. Permanently. Across the grounds, Mateo Rojas had been making his way back toward the arena when everything went black. He stopped in his tracks, heart pounding, scanning the dark with growing dread. He could barely see, but he could feel something was wrong, something off. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was tense, coiled. Then he heard it. A creak, a soft metallic clank, and the unmistakable sound of a gate being opened. Someone was releasing the bull. From behind the shadows of the far bleachers, Gage Wildhorn Salazar stood with a smug grin on his face. It was him who pulled the main power feed. He'd overheard enough in the last 48 hours to know Rhett was hiding something big. Something dangerous. And if Diablo tore him apart in front of the cameras, well, that would go viral. Gage never meant for anyone else to get hurt, but he never considered that chaos doesn't follow scripts, especially not when it's been caged for years. Inside the pen, the gate creaked open. Diablo didn't hesitate. He stepped out, not charging, not crazed, but purposeful. Each step thundered across the hollow arena floor, his massive frame barely visible in the ambient glow of distant emergency lights. Rhett turned slowly. His eyes met the bull's once more. There was no fear this time, no anger, just understanding. "You didn't ask for this," he whispered. "Neither did I." And still, he stood his ground. Then came the voice. From the shadows, familiar, cold. "Step away from the bull, Rhett." It was Royce Montoya. He emerged from the dark with a shotgun in hand, aimed directly at Diablo. "I read everything," he said. What Delgado started, what you tried to end. But that animal is a living weapon. And he's not leaving this arena alive. Rhett didn't move. You shoot him, he said softly. You kill more than a bull. You kill the truth. But before Royce could answer, Diablo turned. Not toward Rhett, but toward the shadows behind them. And charged. Diablo's echo surged forward, but not at Rhett. He charged straight at the figure behind the bleachers. The crash of hooves against metal echoed like thunder. Dave Salazar screamed, stumbling backward. The camera he'd used to record everything now crushed beneath the bull's hooves. He scrambled, crawling through the dirt, barely escaping as Diablo stopped inches from his face, snorting violently. But Diablo didn't finish him. He simply turned away, as if delivering a message. I know who lit the fire this time. Rhett moved fast. He stood between Diablo and Royce, arms out, body trembling. Put the gun down, he shouted. He's not the one you should be afraid of. Royce's hand shook. For a moment, it looked like he might actually pull the trigger. You don't understand, Royce said through clenched teeth. If the board finds out what really happened back then, about Project Echo, about Delgado San Sable burns all over again, people like me, we lose everything. You already did, Rhett said. We all did. Just then, Mateo burst into the arena, chest heaving. Stop, he yelled. Everyone just stop. He looked from his father to the bull, then to Royce. Is this what it's all about? Covering up what happened. Killing the truth before. It walks out into the light? Rhett turned to his son, something broken in his expression. You shouldn't be here. But Mateo stepped closer. I should have been here a long time ago. Royce lowered the shotgun, breathing hard. You think this bull is some kind of symbol? He's not. He's a monster created by monsters. You want to let him live? Fine, but he'll turn on you. It's only a matter of time. Rhett shook his head. No, he's not the monster. We are. We made him this way. And still he chose not to kill. A long silence followed. Diablo's echo stood in the center of the arena, unmoving, watching, waiting. Rhett approached him, slowly, cautiously. He placed one hand on the bull's side, just over the old brand. Diablo didn't flinch. He lowered his head, submitted. Rhett's voice cracked as he looked back at Royce Mateo, the few remaining onlookers emerging from the shadows. Let this be the end of it, he said. Not with bullets, with truth. And just then sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the authorities, and Rhett knew the past hadn't just caught up to him. It had arrived. The flashing red and blue lights washed over the arena like a warning and a reckoning. Officers moved quickly but carefully. Royce Montoya dropped the shotgun to the dirt without a word. His face was pale, sweat glistening across his forehead. He didn't run. He didn't resist. The silence between him and Rhett Calderón was heavier than any pair of handcuffs. When the sheriff asked who should be held responsible, Rhett didn't speak. He just looked at Diablo and then at himself. There were no innocent men here. Only survivors. Mateo Rojas sat on the tailgate of an ambulance, watching as the pieces of the past were loaded into evidence boxes. Royce's files, the broken camera, syringes from Project Echo, the branding tools from the Delgado era. Everything that had been buried for so long was finally being unearthed. Rhett emerged from the questioning with a cut on his cheek and a weight off his chest. He walked over to his son, stood in front of him awkwardly. They'll probably charge me too, Rhett said. Accessory to something that never should have happened. Mateo looked up. Good. Maybe now it can finally stop. By morning, the crowd had vanished, the arena empty except for Rhett and Diablo. The bull stood inside the open pen, watching the man who had once been both captor and caretaker. Rhett unlatched the side gate and motioned toward the wide, open land behind the rodeo grounds. Go, he said, voice barely audible. You don't owe us anything. For a moment, the bull didn't move. But then, slowly, with the grace of something older than violence, Diablo's echo walked into the wild, leaving the ring and his past behind. Talon Esquivel approached quietly, removing his hat. He'll survive out there? He asked. Rhett nodded. He already has. Talon studied him for a moment. What about you? Rhett took a deep breath, the morning air sharp in his lungs. I'll face what's coming. For the first time in my life, I'm not running. The old cowboy smiled, tipped his hat. Took you long enough. Later that week, Gage Salazar posted a video online. Not of Rhett's breakdown, not of the blackout, but of the moment Diablo lowered his head to Rhett's touch. The caption read, "Not a monster, just a mirror." The video went viral not for its violence, but for its silence. For its meaning. And the quiet days that followed, Mateo visited his father again. No anger, no yelling, just a chair on the porch and two men staring into the fading sunset. Because some wounds don't need to be healed. They just need to be seen. If this story moved you, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. More powerful, true-to-life stories are coming your way, stories that stay with you long after they end. Don't miss what's next. Turn on notifications and stay with us.